The envelope landed on the glass table with a dry sound that echoed through the silent penthouse. Cassidy Wells looked at the contents scattered before her and felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Photographs. Dozens of them. Each one showed moments that should be private, intimate, fake, but convincing. She and Nathaniel Muller walking hand in hand down Ocean Drive. Him kissing her forehead at a restaurant. The two of them laughing on a yacht at sunset. But it wasn't these images that made her blood freeze. It was the last photo in the pile. In it, Cassidy appeared at 17 years old, wearing a uniform she swore never to wear again, next to a man who should be dead, and written in red pen on the back of the photograph. A single sentence that destroyed everything. Frank McNelson knows who you really are. You have 48 hours. Nathaniel entered the room at that exact moment, 2 champagne glasses in his hands, completely oblivious to the fact that the $600,000 deal they had made 3 weeks ago had just turned into a death sentence for both of them. Hi, I'm Rachel Ashwood, and this is another fictional narration created for entertainment. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe to the channel so this content reaches more people. Leave your like, share, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's continue, because things are just starting to get really dangerous. 3 weeks earlier, Cassidy Wells was at the worst moment of her life. Sitting in a tiny apartment in Little Havana, surrounded by overdue rent bills and eviction notices, she held the phone with trembling hands as she listened to her agent in Los Angeles say the words, "No actress wants to hear." "Cassidy, honey, you need to face reality. 26 years old. No significant credits. No real connections in the industry. Maybe it's time to consider other career options." Other options. As if she had choices. As if she hadn't sold everything she owned, burned all bridges, lied to everyone she knew just to have a chance in Hollywood. But Hollywood didn't want Cassidy Wells. Hollywood wanted perfect faces, powerful connections, people who didn't come from places like Clearwater, Florida, with pasts that were better left buried. She hung up the phone and looked at the eviction notice taped to the door. 72 hours to pay $4,000, or she'd be thrown out on the street. 72 hours to perform a miracle. That's when the message arrived. An unknown number, an impossible proposal. Need an actress for a 3-month job. $600,000. Interested? Cassidy read the message 3 times, certain it was some kind of elaborate scam. Nobody offered $600,000 for 3 months of work. Nobody legitimate, at least. But when you're 72 hours away from sleeping on the street, legitimacy becomes a negotiable concept. She responded. Details? The answer came in less than a minute. Meeting tonight, 9 o'clock, Zuma, Miami. Ask for Nathaniel Muller. Wear something elegant. Bring your best performance. Cassidy knew Zuma. Everyone in Miami knew it. It was the kind of restaurant where an entree cost more than her overdue rent, where celebrities and powerful people dined in private booths, where the kind of business that happened was rarely legal. She should have ignored the message, should have blocked the number and looked for a normal, safe, honest job. But Cassidy Wells hadn't come to Miami looking for safety. She had come to escape, and sometimes escaping meant running toward danger. At 9 o'clock that night, Cassidy entered Zuma, wearing the only decent dress she still owned, a simple black number she had bought on clearance 2 years ago. The maitre d' looked her up and down with barely disguised disdain until she mentioned the name Nathaniel Muller. The change was instantaneous. The disdain transformed into cautious respect, almost fear. "Of course, miss. This way, please." He guided her through the crowded restaurant, past tables where she recognized at least 3 Miami Heat players and an actress who had won an Oscar the previous year, to a private booth in the back, isolated by heavy velvet curtains. The maitre d' pulled back the curtain, and Cassidy entered a different world. The booth was larger than her apartment, with soft lighting, a polished mahogany table, and a man sitting alone, studying a tablet with the concentration of someone analyzing war documents. Nathaniel Muller was 33 years old, but there was something in his dark gray eyes that suggested he had lived enough for 3 lifetimes. He wore a suit that probably cost more than a car, perfectly styled dark brown hair, and had the kind of jawline that made casting directors sigh. But it wasn't his appearance that made Cassidy hesitate at the booth entrance. It was the way he looked at her when he raised his eyes from the tablet, as if he could see through all the lies she had built, straight to the rotten core she was hiding. "Cassidy Wells," he said, and it wasn't a question. His voice was deep, controlled, the kind of voice that was used to giving orders and seeing them obeyed. 26 years old, born in Clearwater, moved to Los Angeles at 19, returned to Florida 6 months ago. 3 small roles in independent productions nobody watched, dozens of rejected auditions, currently owing $4,000 in rent and about to be evicted. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. We have much to discuss." Cassidy sat, trying to control the tremor in her hands. "You investigated my life." "I investigate everything," Nathaniel replied, pouring red wine into 2 crystal glasses. "Especially when I'm about to offer someone more money than most people earn in a decade." He pushed a glass toward her. "Do you drink?" "Depends on what you want in return," Cassidy responded, surprising herself with the firmness in her own voice. Nathaniel smiled, and it was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Smart. I like that. I'm going to need intelligence for what I have in mind." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made Cassidy feel like a specimen under a microscope. "I'll be direct, because I don't have time for games. I need a girlfriend. Fake, obviously. For 3 months. In return, you get $600,000, half up front, half when the job is finished." Cassidy blinked, certain she had heard wrong. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" "For 3 months, Nathaniel confirmed, as if discussing a common business contract. "Public appearances, social events, occasional social media posts. Nothing too complicated for someone with your acting skills." "Why do you need a fake girlfriend?" Cassidy asked, her actress mind already looking for the trick, the hidden trap. "And why pay so much money for it?" Nathaniel took a sip of wine before responding. "Because I made a stupid bet when I was drunk, and now I need to win it, or I lose something very valuable." He placed the glass on the table with deliberate care. 3 months ago, a business associate and I bet on who could maintain a stable relationship for 3 months. The winner gets exclusive control of Miami's ports. The loser leaves the city and never comes back. Cassidy felt something cold descend down her spine. "Miami's ports. You're talking about millions of dollars." "Billions, actually," Nathaniel corrected. "And before you ask, yes, I'm involved in businesses that some people would consider questionable. But you don't need to worry about details. All you need to do is appear by my side, smile, hold my hand occasionally, and convince my rival that I finally found someone who makes me want to be a better man." He said the last words with so much sarcasm that Cassidy almost laughed. "And if I refuse?" she asked, although both knew she had no real choice. Nathaniel opened a leather folder and pushed a check across the table. It was for $300,000, made out in her name. "Then you go back to your apartment, get evicted in 3 days, and probably end up waiting tables or worse to survive. Or," he tilted his head, "you accept this check now, pay your debts, and spend the next 3 months living in luxury while pretending to be in love with me. When it's over, you get another $300,000 and can go wherever you want, do whatever you want, be whoever you want." Cassidy looked at the check. $300,000. Enough to change her life. Enough to truly start over. Enough to finally leave the past buried where it belonged. "Are there rules?" she asked. "There are always rules," Nathaniel replied. "Rule number 1, you don't tell anyone about our deal. To the outside world, we're a real couple. Rule number 2, you do exactly what I say when I say it. If I need you to appear at an event, you appear. If I need you to post a photo, you post. Rule number 3, no real feelings. This is business, not romance. Rule number 4, if you try to deceive me, betray me, or ruin this bet in any way, the deal ends, and you don't see a cent of the final payment. He leaned forward, and Cassidy could see something dangerous glinting in his dark gray eyes. And rule number 5, you never, ever try to find out more about my business than I choose to tell you. Curiosity in my world doesn't just kill cats, Cassidy. It kills people. The silence that followed was heavy, loaded with all the unspoken things. Cassidy knew she should get up and leave, knew that accepting money from a man like Nathaniel Mueller was like making a pact with something dark and dangerous. But when she looked at the check again, all she could see was freedom. Freedom from debts, from poverty, from constant desperation. Freedom from the past that haunted her. I accept, she said, and by taking the check, sealed a fate she couldn't yet imagine. Nathaniel smiled, and this time there was something genuine in that expression. Excellent. We start tomorrow. My driver will pick you up at 10 in the morning. Bring only the essentials. You're moving into my house. What? Cassidy almost dropped the check. Nobody will believe we're a couple if you live in Little Havana and I live on Star Island, Nathaniel explained patiently. You'll have your own room, your own privacy. But we need to sell the image that we live together. He stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. Welcome to the deal, Cassidy Wells. I hope your acting skills are as good as you claim, because you're going to need every one of them. As Cassidy left the restaurant that night, the check burning in her purse like evidence of a crime not yet committed, she had no idea she had just entered a game much more dangerous than any bet over ports. She didn't know that Frank McNelson, Nathaniel's rival, was a man who didn't accept losing, and she definitely didn't know that her own identity, carefully constructed and protected, was about to be destroyed. Nathaniel Muller's mansion on Star Island was exactly the kind of obscene property Cassidy expected. 10,000 square feet of modern luxury, overlooking Biscayne Bay, infinity pool, gardens that looked like they came out of a magazine, and enough security to make the White House seem accessible. When Nathaniel's driver, a silent man named Marcus who was clearly more bodyguard than driver, dropped her off at the main entrance, Cassidy had to fight the urge to run back to the car. This was insane. She was about to move into a stranger's house, a man who openly admitted being involved in criminal business, all for money. But then she thought of the check she had deposited that morning, of the $300,000 that now made her bank account look like a phone number, and kept walking. Nathaniel met her in the entrance hall, wearing jeans and a simple white shirt that somehow looked more expensive than the previous night's suit. "Welcome to your new temporary home," he said, making a broad gesture. "Let Marcus take your things to the room. We need to talk about our relationship story." He guided her to a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the water. On a coffee table were several folders organized with military precision. "We met 4 months ago," Nathaniel began, opening the first folder, "at an art gallery in Wynwood. You were admiring a piece by a local artist. I was there for a charity event. We started talking, discovered we both love classic cinema and Thai food, and exchanged numbers." Cassidy picked up the folder and found photos of the gallery in question, information about the artist, even receipts from a Thai restaurant in Brickell. "You faked an entire relationship history." "Attention to detail," Nathaniel corrected. "Frank McNelson will investigate every aspect of our relationship. He'll look for inconsistencies, contradictions, any proof that this is fake, so we need to be perfect." He opened another folder. "Our first date was at Siam Square restaurant. You ordered pad thai, I ordered green curry. We talked for 3 hours about Hitchcock films. I took you home, gave you a kiss on the cheek, and asked to see you again." "You really thought of everything," Cassidy murmured, flipping through pages of fabricated information. "I have to think," Nathaniel said, and for the first time she heard something like weariness in his voice. "Frank McNelson isn't just a business rival. He's a man who likes to destroy things. If he discovers this is fake, he won't just win the bet. He'll use it to humiliate me, weaken me, possibly kill me. Cassidy looked up sharply. Kill? Welcome to my world, Nathaniel said without emotion. Where bets aren't just about money, they're about power, respect, survival. Frank has wanted to see me dead for years. This bet was my stupid attempt to prove I'm better than him at something besides violence. Now I realize it was a mistake. But I can't go back. So I need to win. He looked directly at her, and Cassidy saw something she didn't expect in his dark gray eyes. Vulnerability. I need you to help me win, Cassidy. And in return, I promise I'll keep you safe. But Nathaniel Mueller had no idea that keeping Cassidy Wells safe would be impossible, because the danger didn't just come from Frank McNelson. The danger was buried in her past, waiting to resurface at the worst possible moment. The first days were surreally easy. Nathaniel took her to dinners at expensive restaurants, where they practiced looking comfortable with each other. He taught her how to hold his hand naturally, how to laugh at his jokes in a way that seemed genuine, how to look at him as if there was nobody else in the room. Cassidy discovered he was a demanding but patient teacher, correcting every small mistake until their interaction seemed perfectly authentic. You're being too stiff, he said during dinner at Komodo, holding her hand over the table. Real couples relax with each other. They don't seem to be constantly on guard. Maybe I'm on guard because this isn't real, Cassidy replied, but forced her shoulders to relax. Better, Nathaniel approved. Now smile at me like I just said something charming. Cassidy smiled, and something strange happened. For a moment, as she looked at Nathaniel through the soft candlelight, as she felt the warmth of his hand in hers, it didn't seem like acting. It seemed real. Dangerously real. Perfect, Nathaniel murmured. And there was something in his voice that made Cassidy's heart race. Exactly like that. But the ease ended in the second week, when Nathaniel announced they would go to the Oceanic Club, one of Miami's most exclusive nightclubs, where Frank McNelson was waiting to officially meet her. He's going to try to intimidate you, Nathaniel warned her as they prepared that night. He'll ask personal questions, look for signs of nervousness, try to make you slip. You can't let him see you're afraid. I'm not afraid, Cassidy lied, adjusting the red dress Nathaniel had bought for her, a stunning piece that cost more than she earned in a year at her previous jobs. You should be, Nathaniel said seriously. Frank McNelson is the kind of man who finds what you love most and destroys it just to watch you suffer. So, no matter what he says, no matter how he tries to provoke you, you stay calm. You smile, hold my hand, and remember you're acting. Just acting. But when Cassidy met Frank McNelson that night, she realized no amount of acting could have prepared her for him. He was in his early 40s, perfectly styled gray hair, ice blue eyes that seemed to see through lies, and a smile that promised violence disguised as charm. So, this is the famous Cassidy, Frank said when Nathaniel introduced them in the club's VIP area. The woman who finally tamed Nathaniel Mueller's ice heart. I must say, I'm impressed. I thought he was incapable of human feelings. Pleasure to meet you, Cassidy replied, keeping her voice steady, despite the fear crawling down her spine. Frank took her hand and kissed it, but his eyes never left hers, studying, analyzing, looking for weaknesses. The pleasure is all mine. You know, when Nathaniel told me he had a girlfriend, I thought it was another one of his lies. He's so good at lying. But here you are, beautiful and real. Or at least, appearing real. The veiled threat hung in the air like toxic smoke. Nathaniel put a possessive arm around Cassidy's waist. She's very real, Frank, and very much mine. So I suggest you keep your hands and your insinuations to yourself. Frank laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Easy, friend, just making conversation. After all, we have 3 months together in this little bet. It would be a shame if something happened to shorten the time. He looked at Cassidy again, and there was something in his gaze that made her want to run. Tell me, Cassidy, what does a woman like you see in a man like Nathaniel? Surely it's not his warm personality. I see a man who's honest about who he is, Cassidy replied, surprising herself with the truth in her words. No masks, no games, just raw truth. That's rare these days. Something dangerous flashed in Frank's eyes. Raw truth. Interesting choice of words. Well, I hope you're prepared for all the truths that come with loving a man like Nathaniel. Some truths are ugly. Some are deadly. He walked away before either of them could respond, disappearing into the club crowd like a predator returning to the shadows. Cassidy realized she was shaking. Nathaniel pulled her closer, his lips near her ear. You did well, but he suspects. We're going to have to be even more convincing from here on out. And that's when Cassidy realized the true magnitude of what she had agreed to do. This wasn't just about faking a relationship. It was about surviving a deadly game where the rules constantly changed, and the price of failure was much higher than losing money. In the third week, things began to change in ways Cassidy didn't expect. Nathaniel started spending more time at home, working from his office instead of going out to mysterious meetings. They had dinner together every night, not at expensive restaurants, but in the mansion's kitchen, talking about movies, books, their lives before all this. Cassidy discovered that Nathaniel had grown up in Miami, son of a man who built an empire through questionable means and died leaving that empire to a son who never asked for it. I was 19 when my father was killed, Nathaniel told her one night, drinking whiskey as they looked at the bay through the windows. A business rival decided it was time for a leadership change. Killed my father, tried to kill me and my mother. I survived. My mother didn't. Cassidy felt something tighten in her chest. I'm sorry. Don't be, Nathaniel said, but his voice was loaded with repressed emotion. I got revenge. Found the man responsible and made sure he paid for every second of suffering he caused. And then I took over my father's empire because it was that, or let everything he built crumble. I had no choice. We always have choices, Cassidy said softly. Nathaniel laughed, a bitter sound. You think so? Then tell me, Cassidy Wells, what choices did you make that brought you here? What choices made you so desperate for money that you agreed to pretend to love a criminal? The question hit too close to truths Cassidy wasn't ready to share. She stood up, suddenly needing distance. I should go to sleep. We have that charity event tomorrow. But Nathaniel held her wrist, gentle but firm. I showed you my demons. Maybe it's fair that you show yours. Cassidy looked at him, at those dark gray eyes that seemed to see much more than she wanted to reveal, and for a crazy moment considered telling the truth. Telling about Clearwater, about the man she met when she was 17, about the things she did to survive. But then she remembered rule number 5. No dangerous truths. No secrets that could destroy the fragile deal between them. My demons are mine, she said, pulling her wrist free. You're not paying enough to have access to them. She saw something like disappointment pass over Nathaniel's face before he masked it with indifference. Fair enough. Good night, Cassidy. As she climbed the stairs to her room, Cassidy couldn't help the feeling that she had just lost something important. Something she didn't know she wanted until it was gone. The 4th week brought Frank McNelson's first real attempt to destroy their relationship. Cassidy was returning from a morning run when a black car stopped beside her. The window rolled down, revealing Frank sitting in the back seat, smiling like a shark that had found blood in the water. Cassidy, what a coincidence. Get in, I'll give you a ride. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but Cassidy knew showing fear would be a mistake. She got into the car, keeping her expression neutral. Frank, I didn't know you lived in this area. I don't, Frank admitted cheerfully. I was passing by and saw you running. Thought we could have a private conversation, away from Nathaniel and his ever-attentive ears. The car started moving, and Cassidy realized the driver wasn't heading toward Nathaniel's mansion. "Where are we going?" "Just a drive," Frank said. "Relax. If I wanted to hurt you, you'd already be dead." The casual declaration of violence made Cassidy's blood freeze, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What do you want, Frank?" "I want to know the truth," Frank replied, turning to face her completely. "I want to know how much Nathaniel is paying you to pretend to love him." The silence that followed was absolute. Cassidy felt her heart stop, restart, race. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please," Frank said with disdain. "I'm not an idiot. Nathaniel Muller doesn't fall in love. He doesn't have the capacity for it. So either you're the most convincing actress I've ever seen, or he found a way to cheat on our bet. I'm betting on the second option." He leaned forward, and Cassidy could smell his expensive cologne mixed with something darker, more threatening. "Here's my offer. You tell me how much he's paying, and I'll double the amount. All you have to do is break up with him publicly, admit the relationship was fake, and let me win this bet. Simple as that." "And if I refuse?" Cassidy asked, although she already knew the answer. Frank smiled, and it was the scariest thing Cassidy had ever seen. "Then I start investigating you more deeply. And I have a feeling Cassidy Wells has secrets she'd prefer to keep buried. Secrets that, if revealed, would destroy not just your deal with Nathaniel, but your entire life." He picked up a tablet and scrolled to a photo that made Cassidy's world collapse. It was her, 10 years younger, with different hair, different name, next to a man who should be in prison. "Recognize this photo?" Frank asked softly. "Because I recognize it. Took some time, a lot of investigation, a lot of money spent on private detectives. But I finally discovered who you really are. Or rather, who you were." Cassidy couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. All she could do was look at that photo, at the evidence of a past she had tried so desperately to leave behind. "So," Frank continued, putting away the tablet, "you have a choice to make. Work for me and keep your secret safe, or continue pretending to love Nathaniel and I reveal to the whole world who you really are. You have 24 hours to decide." The car stopped exactly where it had picked up Cassidy. Frank opened the door for her. Always the gentleman, always the predator. "Choose wisely, Cassidy, or whatever your real name is." As the car drove away, Cassidy stood on the sidewalk, trembling not from cold, but from pure terror. Frank McNelson had discovered the truth, and now she had to decide between betraying Nathaniel or having her life destroyed. But there was a third option Frank hadn't considered. An option Cassidy learned long ago, when she was a different girl with a different name. Sometimes the only way to win an impossible game was to change the rules completely. If you're loving this story and want more adult content full of tension, drama, and unexpected twists, don't forget to check out the Dangerous Obsession ebook collection, pinned in the comments and available on the QR code on screen. These are intense stories that will hook you from beginning to end. Now, let's get back to Cassidy, because things are about to get even more complicated. Cassidy returned to the mansion in a state of shock. She passed Marcus at the entrance, went straight up to her room, and locked the door. Then, for the first time in years, she allowed herself to completely panic. Frank McNelson knew. He knew about Clearwater, about the man in the photo, about all the terrible things she had done to survive when she was too young to know there were other options. He knew, and that meant he had power over her. Power to destroy not just the deal with Nathaniel, but the entire life she had built since fleeing Clearwater 10 years ago. She needed to think, needed a plan. But before she could organize her chaotic thoughts, someone knocked on the door. "Cassidy." Nathaniel's voice was low, concerned. "Marcus said you came back looking disturbed. Is everything okay?" "No," she wanted to scream. "Nothing is okay. Your rival discovered my past and is blackmailing me, and I don't know what to do." But instead, she took a deep breath and opened the door. "I'm fine. Just tired from the run." Nathaniel studied her with those penetrating eyes that saw too much. "You're lying, and you're not very good at it, which is ironic considering you're an actress." He entered the room without being invited, closing the door behind him. "What happened?" Cassidy considered lying again, but she was tired. Tired of hiding, of pretending, of carrying secrets that weighed like stones on her chest. "Frank approached me today," she admitted. "He knows our relationship is fake, and he has information about my past that can destroy me. He wants me to work for him, to break up with you publicly and let him win the bet." She expected anger, accusations, maybe even violence. But Nathaniel just nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he already suspected. "What kind of information?" Cassidy hesitated, but she had come too far to stop now. "When I was 17, I was in a bad place. No money, no family, no options. I met a man who offered me work. I didn't know at the time that he was involved in illegal things. When I found out, it was too late. I was implicated, had done things that could put me in prison." She forced herself to look at Nathaniel, expecting to see judgment, but all she saw was understanding. "You ran," he said. "It wasn't a question. I changed my name, changed my appearance, created a new identity. Spent the last 10 years trying to be someone different, someone better. And now Frank is going to take all that away from me unless I help him destroy you." Cassidy felt tears burn her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "I'm sorry. I should have told you before. Should have been honest about who I was." To her surprise, Nathaniel stepped forward and gently wiped away a tear that had escaped. "We all have pasts we prefer to forget, Cassidy. I more than most. You don't owe me your confessions or your shame, but Frank will expose everything," Cassidy said, her voice breaking. "He'll destroy the life I built." "Not if I destroy him first," Nathaniel replied, and there was something absolutely lethal in his voice. "Frank made a mistake by threatening you. He doesn't realize that by doing that, he made this personal. And when things become personal, I don't play by the rules anymore." He held Cassidy's face between his hands, forcing her to look at him. "Trust me. We'll find a way out of this, together." And in that moment, looking into Nathaniel Muller's dark gray eyes, Cassidy realized something terrifying. She wasn't acting anymore. The feelings she had for him were real, dangerously, stupidly real. But before she could process this revelation, Nathaniel's phone rang. He answered, his expression becoming increasingly somber as he listened. "When?" he asked curtly. A pause. "I understand. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at Cassidy with something that looked like apology. "I have to go out. Business problem that can't wait. But you stay here, locked in the mansion. Marcus will stand guard. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Understood?" "Nathaniel, what's happening?" Cassidy asked, fear rising in her throat. "Just a precaution," he said. But she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand instinctively moved to where she knew he kept a gun. "Frank is escalating things. I need to deal with this before it gets out of control." He leaned in, and to Cassidy's complete surprise, kissed her forehead. "Stay safe. I'll be back soon." But Nathaniel didn't come back soon. Hours passed, night fell, and Cassidy was alone in the enormous mansion with only Marcus and oppressive silence for company. It was at 2 a.m. when she heard it, the sound of breaking glass coming from somewhere downstairs. Cassidy froze, her heart racing. Marcus should be down there. Marcus should prevent anyone from entering, unless something had happened to Marcus. She grabbed her phone to call Nathaniel, but there was no signal. Someone was blocking communications. Real, visceral panic took hold of her. Cassidy moved silently to the bedroom door, locking it and pushing a heavy chair against it. Then she searched for anything she could use as a weapon. All she found was a heavy metal lamp. It would have to be enough. It would have to be. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, slow, deliberate, the sound of someone who wasn't in a hurry because they knew the prey had nowhere to go. "Cassidy," a voice sang from the other side of the door. It wasn't Frank's voice. It was someone she didn't recognize. "We know you're in there. Make things easy for everyone and open the door. We just want to talk." Lies. Cassidy knew how to recognize lies. She had told enough of them in her life. Whoever was on the other side wasn't there to talk. They were there to hurt her, possibly kill her. The doorknob turned. The door shook against the lock. Then came the sound of something heavy hitting the wood. They were breaking down the entrance. Cassidy looked desperately around the room, searching for an exit. The window. She ran to it, opened it, looked down. 2-story drop to the garden. She could survive, but would probably break something. The door shuddered again, cracks appearing in the wood. There was no choice. Cassidy climbed onto the windowsill, the Miami night wind whipping her hair, and for a crazy moment, she thought about all the choices that had led her here. All the lies, all the secrets, all the time she chose survival over honesty. And then she jumped. The fall seemed to last an eternity, and a second at the same time. Cassidy hit the ground in a flower bed, the soft earth breaking part of the impact, but pain still exploded through her left ankle. She bit her lip to keep from screaming, forcing herself to stand despite the agony. Above her, she could hear angry shouts as the invaders realized she had escaped. She had seconds, maybe less. Cassidy ran, or rather, limped as fast as she could through the gardens toward the back gate she had noticed during her morning runs. Her ankle screamed protest with every step, but she ignored it. Pain was temporary. Death was permanent. She reached the gate, her hands trembling as she struggled with the lock. Behind her, she could hear approaching footsteps, voices shouting orders. The lock finally gave way. Cassidy went through the gate and out onto the dark Star Island street, with no idea where to go, no phone, no help. Just her and the night and pursuers who wouldn't stop until they found her. That's when the headlights illuminated her. A car accelerated toward her, and for a terrible moment Cassidy thought it was them, that she had escaped only to be captured again. But then the car skidded to a stop, and Nathaniel got out, his expression a mixture of relief and murderous fury. "Get in the car," he ordered, and Cassidy didn't need to be told twice. She dove into the back seat while Nathaniel returned to the driver's seat and stepped on the accelerator. The car roared down the street, leaving Star Island behind. "Marcus?" Cassidy managed to ask through clenched teeth of pain. "Alive," Nathaniel said tensely. "They knocked him out, but he'll recover. He was the one who alerted me that something was wrong." He looked at her through the rear-view mirror, and Cassidy saw something she had never seen before in his eyes. Fear. "Are you hurt?" "Just my ankle," Cassidy replied. "I jumped from the window." "You jumped," Nathaniel repeated, and there was something like admiration in his voice. "From the second floor. Seemed better than the alternative," Cassidy said, and then, inexplicably, she started to laugh. Hysterical laughter, born of fear and adrenaline and the absolute insanity of her situation. Nathaniel said nothing, just drove, his hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to turn his knuckles white. They drove for 20 minutes before he finally stopped in front of a discreet building in Coral Gables. "Where are we?" Cassidy asked. "Safe place," Nathaniel replied, getting out and opening the door for her. "One of several I keep for emergencies. Frank doesn't know about this one." He helped her out of the car, and Cassidy couldn't help the groan of pain when she put weight on her injured ankle. Without a word, Nathaniel picked her up in his arms, carrying her into the building as if she weighed nothing. The apartment was small, but well-equipped, clearly maintained for exactly this type of situation. Nathaniel placed her gently on a sofa and disappeared, returning moments later with a first aid kit. "Let me see," he said, kneeling in front of her and carefully removing her shoe. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as they examined her swollen ankle. "It's not broken, just sprained. You were lucky." "I don't feel lucky," Cassidy murmured, watching as he wrapped her ankle with practiced efficiency. "Who were those people? Why did they attack me?" Nathaniel finished bandaging and sat beside her on the sofa, running a hand through his hair in a rare gesture of frustration. "Frank's men. He decided that if he can't buy you, he'll eliminate you. Without you, our relationship obviously ends, and he wins the bet." "So he tried to kill me over a bet?" Cassidy asked, incredulous. "It's not just about the bet," Nathaniel said wearily. "It never was. Frank and I have history, Cassidy. Bloody history that goes back years. He killed people I loved. I destroyed businesses he built. This bet was just the latest battle in a war that's been going on for a long time." He looked at her, and Cassidy saw guilt in his eyes. "I should never have involved you in this. I thought I could keep you safe, that I could control the situation. I was wrong. And now you almost died because of my arrogance." Cassidy should be angry, should blame him for putting her in danger, but all she could feel was a strange sense of clarity. "I chose to accept your deal," she said. "I knew there were risks. Maybe I didn't know the risks included assassination attempts, but I knew I was entering something dangerous. This is my fault as much as yours. You're too understanding for someone who just jumped from a window to save her life," Nathaniel said, and there was something like admiration in his voice. "Or too stupid," Cassidy replied. "Haven't decided which yet." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened hanging between them. Then Nathaniel spoke, his voice low and intense. "I'm going to end this. I'm going to find Frank, and I'm going to make sure he never threatens you or anyone else again. But that means breaking rules, crossing lines that can't be uncrossed. It means open war." "And the bet?" Cassidy asked. "To hell with the bet," Nathaniel said with a ferocity that made her shiver. "Some games aren't worth playing, especially when he hesitated, people I care about are in danger." Cassidy looked at him, at this man who had entered her life with an impossible proposal, and somehow become something much more important than just an employer. "You care about me?" she asked softly. Nathaniel met her eyes, and what Cassidy saw there made her forget to breathe. "More than I should," he admitted. "More than is safe. You were supposed to be just business, Cassidy. Just an actress hired for a job. But somewhere along the way, you became real, and now I don't know how to go back to pretending." Cassidy's heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Then don't go back," she whispered. "Don't pretend. Be real with me." And then Nathaniel was kissing her, and it wasn't for cameras or to convince rivals. It was real, desperate, loaded with all the emotions both had tried to deny. Cassidy lost herself in that kiss, in his hands on her face, in his body pressed against hers, in everything that was Nathaniel Muller without masks or lies. When they finally separated, both were breathless. "This complicates things," Nathaniel said, his forehead resting against hers. "This complicates everything," Cassidy agreed. "But maybe complicated is better than fake." Nathaniel laughed, a low and genuine sound she had never heard before. "You're dangerous, Cassidy Wells, more dangerous than Frank McNelson will ever be." "Good," Cassidy said, smiling, "because we're going to need all the danger we can get if we're going to survive what comes next." And she was right, because Frank McNelson wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat. And when he discovered that Cassidy had escaped, that Nathaniel was preparing a counterattack. He would escalate things in ways neither of them could predict. But for the first time since it all began, Cassidy wasn't alone. She had Nathaniel, and Nathaniel had her. And together, maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to win a game that seemed impossible to win. The next days were a blur of planning, preparation, and growing tension. Nathaniel gathered his most trusted team, men and women who had been with him for years, who owed their lives to him and would give those lives if he asked. They met in the safe apartment, transforming the small living room into an improvised command center. "Frank is hiding," Marcus reported, his face still showing bruises from the attack. "He knows you'll retaliate, so he's in one of his safe places. But we have people watching. Eventually, he'll have to come out." "We can't wait for eventually," Nathaniel said, studying a map of Miami spread over the table. "The longer we wait, the more time he has to plan another attack. We need to force him out." "How?" asked a woman named Diana, who Cassidy had learned was Nathaniel's tech specialist. "Give him something he can't resist," Cassidy said, and all eyes turned to her. "Give him me." "Absolutely not," Nathaniel said immediately. "I'm not using you as bait." "You're not using me," Cassidy argued. "I'm offering myself. Frank wants to eliminate me, right? So let's let him think he has a chance. I appear in public, alone, vulnerable. He sends people to get me. And when he does, you grab those people and make them take you to Frank." "It's too risky," Marcus said, but Cassidy could see he was considering it. "It's the only way," Cassidy insisted. "Frank won't come out of hiding for anything less than guaranteed victory. I'm that guarantee." Nathaniel looked at her for a long moment, and Cassidy could see the war happening behind his eyes. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. "All right, but we do it my way, with my rules. And if at any point it looks like you're in real danger, we abort." "Understood. Understood," Cassidy agreed, ignoring the fear crawling down her spine. She had jumped from a second-floor window. She could do this. They planned meticulously. Cassidy would appear at Bayside Marketplace, a popular outdoor mall always full of tourists and locals. She would be alone, apparently shopping, vulnerable. But in reality, she would be surrounded by Nathaniel's people, all disguised, all armed, all ready to intervene the moment Frank made his move. "Remember," Nathaniel instructed her on the morning of the operation, holding her face between his hands. "You're not a hero. You don't try to fight. The second someone approaches you, you scream, you run, and you let my team handle it. Promise me." "I promise," Cassidy said, covering his hands with hers. "Nathaniel, it's going to work. We have a good plan." "Plans fail," Nathaniel said grimly, "especially when Frank McNelson is involved. He's unpredictable, violent, and smarter than he likes to appear." He pulled her into a tight embrace. "If something happens to you, if he hurts you, I'll burn all of Miami down to find him." "Nothing will happen," Cassidy said with more confidence than she felt. "Because you'll be protecting me, and I trust you." They were the truest words she had ever said. Somewhere along this crazy deal, she had started to trust Nathaniel Mueller completely. With her life, with her secrets, with her heart. Bayside Marketplace was crowded when Cassidy arrived at noon. Tourists took photos of the bay, families ate at outdoor restaurants, street musicians played on corners. Everything seemed so normal, so innocent. Nobody knew they were in the middle of a dangerous operation. Cassidy walked slowly through the shops, pretending to look at windows, but all her senses were on maximum alert. She could see Marcus disguised as a street vendor, Diana sitting in a cafe with a laptop, other members of Nathaniel's team scattered throughout the area, all seeming to belong, all watching. And somewhere, hidden but present, was Nathaniel. She couldn't see him, but she could feel his presence, like a protective ghost. 15 minutes passed, then 30. Cassidy was starting to think Frank wouldn't take the bait when she saw them. Two men, dressed casually but moving with very deliberate purpose, making their way through the crowd toward her. She recognized one of them from the night of the mansion attack. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to keep walking, pretending not to have noticed them. They approached, one on each side, surrounding her. "Cassidy Wells," one of them said quietly. "You're going to come with us quietly, or we'll have to make a scene." This was the moment. Cassidy opened her mouth to scream, to run, to do exactly what Nathaniel had said. But then she saw something that froze the blood in her veins. A child, no more than 5 years old, was standing directly behind one of the men. If Nathaniel's team intervened now, if they started a shootout, that child would be in the line of fire. Cassidy made a decision in a split second. She didn't scream. She didn't run. Instead, she nodded and said calmly, "All right, I'll go with you. Just don't hurt anyone here." The men looked surprised, but quickly grabbed her, each holding an arm, and began guiding her through the crowd toward the parking lot. Cassidy could feel the eyes of Nathaniel's team on her, could imagine their confusion, their frustration. But she had made the right choice. She knew she had. Some things were more important than plans. They took her to a black van with darkened windows. The side door opened, and Cassidy was pushed inside. And there, sitting calmly as if waiting for her, was Frank McNelson. "Cassidy," he said, smiling that shark smile. "What a pleasant surprise. I thought you'd be harder to capture. But here you are, voluntarily entering my van. I must say, I'm impressed by your stupidity." The van started moving, accelerating out of the parking lot. Cassidy looked through the rear window and saw Nathaniel emerging from the crowd, running after the van, his expression a mask of fury and fear. But they were too fast. The van turned a corner, and Nathaniel disappeared from view. "Where are you taking me?" Cassidy asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. "To a place where we can have a proper conversation," Frank replied. "Away from Nathaniel and his heroic delusions of saving you. You and I, Cassidy, are going to settle this once and for all." He leaned forward, and Cassidy could see madness dancing in his ice-blue eyes. "I'm going to give you one last chance. Work for me. Help me destroy Nathaniel, and I'll let you live. Refuse and, well, let's just say Biscayne Bay is very deep and bodies disappear there all the time." Cassidy looked at Frank McNelson, at this man who had terrorized her life for weeks, who had threatened to expose her secrets, who had tried to kill her. And she realized something. She wasn't afraid anymore. Yes, she was in danger. Yes, she could die. But fear had been replaced by something stronger. Anger. "No," she said clearly. "I'm not going to work for you. I'm not going to betray Nathaniel. And you know why? Because he's worth 10 of you. Because he may be a criminal, but at least he has honor. You? You're just a coward who threatens women because you can't beat men." The smile disappeared from Frank's face. "You're going to regret those words." "Probably," Cassidy agreed. "But at least I'll regret them knowing I told the truth." Frank raised his hand, and Cassidy braced for the blow. But before he could hit her, the van shook violently. The sound of metal colliding with metal echoed through the enclosed space. They had been hit by another vehicle. The van skidded, the driver fighting for control. Through the window, Cassidy saw a black SUV accelerating alongside them. And driving that SUV, with an expression of absolute determination, was Nathaniel. "He found you," Cassidy said, and couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. "Of course he found you. Because he doesn't give up on people he loves." Frank let out a string of curses, shouting orders to the driver. But it was too late. Nathaniel's SUV hit the van again, this time with enough force to make it spin. The world turned upside down. Cassidy was thrown against the side of the van, pain exploding through her shoulder. Glass shattered, Metal groaned. And then, finally, everything stopped. Cassidy was lying on her side, disoriented but alive. Around her, Frank's men groaned, injured but conscious. Frank was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes still gleamed with anger. The van's side door was ripped off, and there was Nathaniel, a gun in his hand, looking at Frank with pure hatred. "It's over, Frank," Nathaniel said, his voice deadly calm. "The bet, the war, everything. It's over." Frank laughed, a crazy and broken sound. "It's never over, Nathaniel. You know that. Even if you kill me, there will be another. There's always another." "Then I'll deal with the next one," Nathaniel said. "But you end today." He aimed the gun, and Cassidy saw his finger begin to squeeze the trigger. "Nathaniel, don't!" she shouted. Nathaniel hesitated, looking at her with confusion. "He tried to kill you." "I know," Cassidy said, dragging herself out of the van, ignoring the pain in her bruised body. "But if you kill him, you become exactly what he says you are. A murderer without redemption. And I know you're more than that." She stood beside him, gently placing her hand over the gun. "Let the police deal with him. Let the justice system do its job. Don't stain your hands with his blood." Nathaniel looked at her, then at Frank, then back at her. Slowly, very slowly, he lowered the gun. "You're lucky," he said to Frank. "Lucky that the woman I love believes I can be better than I am." He pulled out his phone and called the police, reporting the kidnapping, the accident, everything. As they waited for the sirens to approach, Cassidy leaned on Nathaniel, exhausted but relieved. "You said you love me," she murmured, in front of Frank. "I did," Nathaniel confirmed, wrapping an arm around her. "Because it's true. Somewhere between the fake deal and the dangerous reality, I fell in love with you, Cassidy Wells. Completely, stupidly, irrevocably." "Good," Cassidy said, smiling despite the pain. "Because I fell in love with you too. And that's going to make the next 3 months much more interesting." Nathaniel laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound Cassidy had ever heard. 3 months? "Honey, after all this, you think I'm going to let you go in 3 months? You're stuck with me now. Forever, if I have anything to say about it." "Forever sounds good," Cassidy said. And then the sirens arrived, and the world exploded in red and blue lights and questions from police officers. But through it all, Nathaniel kept Cassidy close, and she knew that finally, after years of running, she had found a place where she belonged. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was real. And sometimes, real was all that mattered. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of police statements, legal hearings, and newspaper headlines. Frank McNelson's arrest was front-page news, especially when the charges began to pile up. Kidnapping, attempted murder, extortion, and dozens of other crimes that investigators discovered once they started digging. Nathaniel also faced scrutiny, but his lawyers were good, and he had been careful over the years to keep his more questionable activities hidden. In the end, he came out with little more than a fine and probation. "Looks like you're going to have to find a new line of work," Cassidy joked one evening as they had dinner at the rebuilt mansion. "Already found one," Nathaniel replied, taking her hand across the table. "I'm going to legitimize the business, transform my father's empire into something legal, something I can be proud of. It'll take time, but I have time, and I have you to keep me honest." "Always," Cassidy promised. "Although I should warn you, my skills at keeping people honest are questionable, considering my own past." "About that," Nathaniel said, his expression becoming serious. "I have something for you." He handed her a leather folder. Cassidy opened it and found legal documents, all stamped and signed. "What is this?" Complete pardon for all crimes you may have committed as a minor, Nathaniel explained. My lawyers worked with prosecutors. Your involvement was coercion, you were a child, and the man responsible has been in prison for years. You're free, Cassidy. Free from the past. Free from fear. Free to be whoever you want to be. Tears filled Cassidy's eyes. How did you do this? I have connections, Nathaniel said with a smile. And when you love someone, you use those connections to give them what they need most. You needed freedom. So I gave you freedom. Cassidy stood up, walked around the table, and kissed him with everything she had. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I love you so much it scares me. Good, Nathaniel replied, pulling her onto his lap. Because scary is our normal now, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. They stayed like that for a long time, intertwined, safe, finally free from all the games and lies. The deal had ended weeks ago. The bet was forgotten. But the relationship, that was real. More real than anything Cassidy had ever experienced. So, Nathaniel said eventually, what does an unemployed actress do with $600,000 and a completely open future? Cassidy thought for a moment. I think she stops acting for other people and starts living her own life. Maybe goes back to school. Maybe writes a book. Maybe just stays with the man she loves and sees where life takes them. I like that plan, Nathaniel said, especially the part about staying with me. That's the best part, Cassidy agreed. And it was. Because sometimes the best relationships start with lies and transform into truth. Sometimes the most broken people find each other and become whole. And sometimes, just sometimes, dangerous bets lead to happy endings. 6 months later, Cassidy was standing on the mansion's terrace, watching the sunset over Biscayne Bay, when Nathaniel found her. Penny for your thoughts, he said, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Just thinking about how strange life is, Cassidy replied, leaning into him. A year ago, I was broke, desperate, hopeless. Now I'm here, with you, happier than I ever thought possible. Life is strange, Nathaniel agreed. But it's also good, especially when you find the right person to share it with. He turned to face her, and Cassidy saw something nervous in his eyes. Actually, I was waiting for the right moment to ask something. Ask what? Cassidy said, her heart beginning to race. Nathaniel knelt down, and suddenly Cassidy couldn't breathe. He took a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a diamond ring that sparkled in the sunset light. Cassidy Wells, I know we started with a fake deal. I know our relationship was built on lies and danger and impossible circumstances. But somewhere along the way, everything became real. You became real. My love for you became real. And I don't want to spend another day pretending I can live without you. Tears were flowing freely down Cassidy's face now. Then don't pretend, she whispered. Marry me, Nathaniel said. For real this time. No deals, no deadlines, no lies. Just you and me, building a life together. Forever. Yes, Cassidy said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Nathaniel slid the ring onto her finger and stood up, pulling her into a kiss that promised all the tomorrows they would have together. And as the sun set over Miami, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Cassidy realized that sometimes the best stories are those that begin with lies and end with truth. Sometimes the most dangerous deals lead to the truest love, and sometimes, just sometimes, betting on something impossible is exactly what you need to do to find everything you always wanted. The wedding happened 3 months later, a small and intimate ceremony on the beach, with only close friends and the family they had chosen. Marcus was the best man, Diana the maid of honor. There was no excessive luxury, no ostentation. just two people promising to love each other through everything life could bring. "I, Nathaniel, take you, Cassidy, as my wife," Nathaniel said, his voice firm and clear. "I promise to protect you, honor you, and love you every day of my life. I promise to be honest, be loyal, and be the man you make me want to be. I, Cassidy, take you, Nathaniel, as my husband," Cassidy replied, her voice breaking with emotion. "I promise to stand by your side through everything. I promise to challenge you, support you, and love you with every part of who I am. I promise that our story, no matter how it began, will have the most beautiful ending possible." When the officiant declared them husband and wife, when Nathaniel kissed her while the ocean roared behind them, Cassidy knew she had finally found her place in the world. Not in Hollywood, not in a fake identity, but here, with him. And that was more than enough. It was everything. Years would pass. They would face challenges, as all couples do. There would be difficult days, and even more difficult nights. But through it all, they would have each other. And in the end, it wasn't the bet that Nathaniel won. It wasn't Miami's ports or the money or the power. It was Cassidy. And Cassidy won something equally valuable. She won a future built not on lies and fear, but on love and truth, and the promise that no matter what happened, they would face it together. Because sometimes the best bets are those you make with your heart, and sometimes, against all odds, you win. Thank you for watching until the end. If you loved this story of Cassidy and Nathaniel, consider becoming a channel member to have access to exclusive videos and special content that aren't available to everyone. Or if you prefer, send a super thanks to support the creation of more stories like this. Every donation made to the channel is entirely destined for the production of new narratives that will move you, surprise you, and make you believe that even the most unlikely beginnings can have extraordinary endings. Until the next story, and remember, sometimes the truest love begins with the most dangerous lie.